Thank you very much, Sally. Obviously, plenty happening in this space, and thank you for setting the tone for us ahead of our panel discussion. There's lots to unpack in our session that's coming up just now, so thank you for setting the tone. We're going to be reflecting on the progress, the challenges faced at the moment, and also our future priorities when it comes to implementing the work health and safety legislation and practices. We will be opening the floor up to questions as well, so hopefully you've all had some experience with Slido before. That's our online Q&A portal. If you are keen to take part in that, the QR code on the bottom right of your screen there, if you point your phone at that, that will take you straight into our session here this morning. Or if you want to do it the old school way, just head to slido.com, no AU, it'll ask you for a code, and that is the code there, SSE Forum 2025. Happy to take your questions where time permits. And you can submit them anonymously. You can also put your name to it. You can also just go in there and endorse someone else's question, and that will bump it up the list and give it higher priority and focus. So let me introduce you now to our panellists this morning. Firstly, WA Director of WorkSafe Mine Safety, Tony Robertson. So Tony, if you wouldn't mind heading up to the stage. From New South Wales, Deputy Resource Regulator, Dwaine Jones. Thank you, Dwaine. Also, Acting Regional Inspector Tyler van der Merwe, and as we just heard from Sally North, the WorkSafe WA Commissioner. They are our panellists. So would you please welcome them up to the stage. Make sure everyone hear me okay? Welcome, panellists. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I'll just put the Slido app down there for a bit because we'll get to that a little bit later in the session. But I wanted to start off, this might be one best for you to answer first, Tyler, and then I might get your thoughts as well, Dwaine. But in terms of the introduction of the work health safety framework, tell us about any meaningful improvements, tangible, quantifiable improvements you've seen in safety outcomes, and as well the regulatory approach that goes with it.
I think you'd see from the slides Sally had put up earlier, particularly when we're looking at the fatality injury frequency rates within the mining sector, sort of pre and post WHS, we are sort of sitting still around that 0.01% in relation to fatalities within the mining industry. So in terms of, I guess, overall change, not much has changed in that space. However, I think it is important to also recognise that most, if not all, mine sites under the MSIA had some sort of safe system of work that was already in place and were operating as if they were risk-based anyway. But what the Work Health and Safety Act has really done is, I guess, formalise that system under the mine safety management system. We do now have principal hazards that sit under that MSMS and the requirement to put in management plans as well. So I think that's given mine operators, I guess, greater accountability, but also autonomy to be able to manage the hazards that are specific to their operation. I think what the MSMS has also done is also formalise the monitor and review process. So as Gary, who will be speaking later on today, will allude to, we're in 2025 now, so we're 3 years into the implementation, which means that everyone will be due to do the 3-year review cycle of the MSMS. So Gary will be sort of asking some questions, and you'll find a lot of inspectors will be asking inspections when they're out on site around what your review cycle looks like. So that's something to consider moving forward as well.
All right. Dwaine, do you want to add to that at all? You've got the, I suppose, unique perspective coming over from New South Wales where something like this has been in place for some time already, but tell us about any meaningful improvements you've seen in New South Wales.
I guess for us is probably the biggest meaningful improvement we got is that now the duty holder who hold that hazard on site was now responsible to make sure that they identified all of them and put appropriate controls in place. And what it did was remove a bit of the cookie cutter approach of the legislation prescriptive, I had that hazard, I had to control it. But what we know was that every site didn't have the same hazard, and the sites are different, so the different controls were in place when needed. So what it effectively did is make people turn to the mind to what was now reasonably practical in that approach as well. And if I've got this hazard, how do I eliminate that in my first instance and work my way down? Because in New South Wales, that is your duty, is to eliminate the hazard. So we saw a fundamental change. If you look at our fatality rate from ours and that, our fatality rate has dropped off quite significantly there. We had quite a spate of them in the road, and we had this review as well. And what it really has changed people's perspective of, I've got this hazard, I'm going to consult my people and I want to eliminate it. That's my first pass, but it makes you turn your mind to your side, not just what the legislation tells as well. So is it a work in progress? Yes, the initial change was difficult for most people because they went from a place where I just got told I had to do to now I need to put my mind to what are the actual hazards and what's the best way to address that. But the outcome is good because you bring your workforce along for the ride as well, and by bringing them along, they'll actually come to you and actually tell you what the best controls are in place, because that's who the one who exposed hazards as well. So there's a lot of benefits of it, and they're the ones in the end you need to implement that control in the field. And if they don't think it's like relevant to them, it will never be effective, because most of our failures that we see are people not doing something that's in place already. You have a system, a procedure, whatever, the person doesn't do it. So if I bring them along for that journey of that hazard, that pretty much that risk-based approach, they understand what the hazard is trying to control, and then they know why that procedure or whatever is in place is there to do for them. So it has a good outcome. Statistically wise, we changed our reporting requirements, so we made a lot more reporting requirements out of this. So we didn't actually see a statistical change in reporting of incidents. What we did see a change is the outcome of those ones. We're no longer killing people from those ones as well. We still see them, but the outcome is different for us. So it's a win for us as well. Any questions for me?
We'll come to the Q&A part a little bit later, Dwaine, but loving the encouragement of audience participation at this early stage. Tony, I might put this one to you. I mean, with any large legislative reform, there are always challenges and hurdles when it comes to implementing that. Can you talk us through some of the major challenges you've faced and how you've tackled those?
Yeah, thanks. Probably there's a number of things I'll probably touch on. The mine safety management system, principal mining hazard management plans. So we had to sort of grapple with what does that look like, you know, what are we expecting from sites. So that's been something that we've had to put our minds to and you know, and look at what people have developed. We've been to some sites where people have done nothing, some people have done something. You know, is it fit for purpose for that mine? So, you know, that's still a work in progress. We're encouraging sites to, you know, to continually review. I looked at the stats recently in the last 12 months. I think we've issued 16 notices on mine safety management systems, and it's mentioned in about 50 other notices. So there's still work to be done in that area. Probably the second thing I'll touch on is just the harmonisation. So we're sort of still grappling with that to make sure that we are properly harmonised with the other states, and that's in you know, what's happening on sites and also as a regulator, and that's part of bringing, you know, someone like Dwaine over to have a look at how do they manage things, and you can hear some insights from him today and talk with him in the breaks and things like that. So it's about, you know, how do we regulate more similarly to the other states and do it better, I guess. The other thing I want to touch on is the mine statutory positions. So that's been probably one of the most difficult things we've done, and I'll touch on that a bit later today and go through that. The other thing that's been difficult is to update all of our codes and guides and online information. As you all know, we are a long way behind on that. We've got heaps of work to do. We are trying to put in place things to get those updated and bring out, you know, more and better information. So that probably gives you a bit of an insight on how we're sort of some of the challenges that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Sally, let's talk about reportable incidents. I suppose it's such an important part of mine safety culture, isn't it? But you've got to, I suppose, rely to some extent on initial assessment of what is reportable, what is a notifiable incident. Tell us about the challenges you've faced in, I suppose, trying to instil that out on site.
It has been a little bit of a tricky one, because what we've actually done is there's requirements in the Act around notifiable matters, and those are the notifiable matters that have certain outcomes largely. So there's the list of injuries, serious injuries, there's fatalities that where they happen on site or they arise from the conduct of a business or undertaking. There's also the category of dangerous incident which had the potential to cause really serious harm. So we have that category, and that's where also you've got a requirement to tell us forthwith, which is to ring us up. We've got the number available for that, and also though it goes with holding the scene where practicable. So where practicable, obviously if someone needs rescuing, first aid and all of those things, that's all permitted, but where possible the scene is held of that until you're given authority to release it. And we look to do that as efficiently as we can. We've got a person available to answer those calls and make those initial assessments around those seriousness, but that's the Act. And then underlying the Act we've got reportable incidents in the regulations, and we've always had some reportable ones in there. But look, the key thing is to firstly figure out if it sits under the Act, because the reportable ones are looking at, well, what else is there on a less urgent basis that's notified into SRS. But firstly, if it does meet the definitions in the Act, then that's what you've got to go with. You've got to do that phone reporting. We do have the interpretative guideline. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the interpretative guideline for incident notification. So if you've got any particular ones that you want to refresh on, I'd encourage you to have a look at that. And also to let us know if, look, you've still got grey areas, you still need to know more. But just say do it in that order and you'll be likely to be getting it right.
Okay. We have had a fairly recent prosecution where an accident scene needed to be preserved. I imagine there are probably competing forces at times like this. Sometimes, an operator might be strongly motivated, shall we say, to not have that happen. But of course, when it comes to safety, there's a job to be done there as well. Tell us about the balance you strike between needing to preserve a scene and also maintaining some sort of operational continuity.
Look, if this has happened in mining, it's also happened outside of mining where a scene hasn't been held when it should have been held. Look, people have got to put their mind to, well, are you set up so that your managers at different levels know their duties around this? Because if they don't know, that could be a factor, as well as there could be other things at play. But I'd first off start with, is there a system that people actually understand when they have this duty? Because people might not make that assessment and they might move on, and there are consequences, there are penalties for that. We will look at that if the scene of a serious incident's not held. It is an important function under the Act. It allows us to do our job. We do take that seriously, and on occasion we have prosecuted for failures in that regard.
Yeah. Tony, did you want to add to that? Do you think there's a clear understanding of where the threshold is there?
Yeah, look, every case is different, and so when something does come through, it is in the back of our mind that we don't want to unduly hinder the work that's going on at the mine. So wherever we can, once we know about it, we try and deploy there as quickly as possible. Commence the investigation, and so once we've kind of finished with the site, we try to hand it back as best we can, or if there's plant involved, we'll try and have that held so it's not in the way at the ROM pad or whatever. So everything that we can do to help you get back to work, we do, but the investigation has primacy, and we'll get that done, and then we can hand back the site or the plant or what have you. So, it is always front of mind for us, one, doing a good investigation, and we can only do that if the scene is held, and then handing back the site. So, don't think we try and hold on to things for a long time. Sometimes we do, but everything is about trying to, help you get back to work where it's safe to do so. And some of our people will write notices to say, do a risk assessment before recommencing and the like.
And if I can just jump onto that as well, I think from a numbers perspective, there's a very large percentage that would be released, very, very quickly because based on risk, we don't need to hold it. So we do take that approach in a large number of cases too.
Yeah. On a similar subject, we have seen some fairly notable prosecutions recently. What lessons can we take from those cases? How are they influencing your regulatory focus and also just general industry behaviour?
Look, I think it ties into our priority area around repeat hazard exposure, because when we look at the kinds of things that are happening and the kinds of things that have led to prosecutions, they do tend to be in the category of hazards that we're quite familiar with. So they do kind of reinforce that risk management approach around identifying critical hazards and putting those controls in place. So we always we have to, if we're looking to prosecute something, we have to be very specific around what our expectations were, what should have been done that was not done, or what was done incorrectly, etc. From the point of view of what's reasonably practicable. And what's reasonably practicable, we look at a lot of things. We look at specific reg requirements, we look at codes of practice, but we also look at industry good practice, what is known in the sector, what is that good practice. So we look at all of those things in determining, is there an actual failure here? We also look at all of the different duty holders. So if we've got a range of businesses that take part in that activity, and even to the point of view of have workers met their duty, we ask all of those questions. We think that's good practice, and in terms of an investigative approach. They have a prosecution policy that sets out a range of parameters. This is a really small part of our work in terms of numbers. So across all industries last year there were 24 prosecutions in the context of thousands of inspection work. So we're talking under 1%. It's a tool we use when we need to, and also under the prosecution policy we do have a number of public interest considerations that sit alongside that too.
If I could just jump in there as well, like yesterday we had an inspector workshop, and the main things that come through when we looked at, say, past few years, 20 odd fatalities, was traffic management was the big ticket item there. Caught between plant, falls from heights, and heat stress and things like that. So these are repeating many times over. So you will see those reflected probably in the prosecutions. But where there's failures of guarding, that's just totally unacceptable in this day and age. I mean, we've had guarding regulations forever, so there should be no unguarded machinery that people get caught up in.
Thank you, Tony. Tyler, when it comes to enforceable WHS undertakings, they must be instigated by the PCBU, not by the inspectorate. Should PCBUs be encouraged to think about that as an option?
Definitely. WHS undertakings is a fairly new concept under the Work Health and Safety Act. So currently, WorkSafe Mine Safety is engaged with a PCBU in relation to an enforceable undertaking. So essentially what an enforceable undertaking is, it's a legally binding agreement between a PCBU and the regulator for an alleged contravention or alleged contravention of the Work Health and Safety Act. It essentially is an agreement or a promise between that PCBU and the regulator to undertake certain activities in relation to the alleged contravention. So it's not something that the inspectorate can actually instigate. It has to be instigated by the PCBU. And really, we won't accept, a proposal for a WHS undertaking if it's a Category 1 offence or if it's a manslaughter charge. But when a regulator will accept a WHS undertaking is when there can be shown to be a community benefit that would be better than court proceedings.
Just maybe one final question before we throw things open to the floor. I might get all of you to perhaps share your insights on this, but what do you see as the main priorities in terms of safety for the next 12 to 18 months? I don't know who wants to start that. Sally, you might be a good one to start off.
I'll start, because I'm in New South Wales and it doesn't really impact anybody. But for our main priority is that roads and other vehicle operating areas, that is one of our principal hazards. We continue to see those near misses or hits nearly every week in our organisation. And if I look back to our recent fatalities, the last one was a young person got run over in a light vehicle on a quarry, and the one before that, the person got run over in a haul truck, another light vehicle in that as well. It continues to be a big focus for us. We've just released a technical reference guide on it for us as well. We've done years worth of work to get to our point as well, and we still are seeing the same amount of incidents. So it's a big focal point for us, and it'll remain that way for the coming years, us as well. The next one is fires and mobile plant. We generally have 3 big hitters every year. Fires mobile plant has not shifted in the last, let's say, decade for us as well. The outcome has changed, that is 100% given, but we still see the same amount of fires. And most of the result there is from poor maintenance. And the other biggest one we're starting to trickle through now is exposure to airborne contaminants. And back to my point about the best thing about a risk-based approach is that now it's turning your mind to how you eliminate those hazards. or even just remove somebody from it. And I guess that's the best part of the law is. But what we're seeing now is that more people are getting exposed to it, and silicosis cases start to come up as well. So we've just put on a health team specifically to address this matter for us because it's become such an issue for us as well in New South Wales. So for us, those are our 3 big focal points for the next 12 months to come.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, pretty much I'll just echo what Dwaine said. I mean, if you look at we've had a number of people run over by heavy vehicles, etc. So, I mean, that's why we've actually, we've got the draft code of practice for traffic management, WA Mine. So we've got 1 month left, well, you've got 1 month left to provide input on that. And yeah, Dwayne's boss sent me through the new technical reference guide last night that they've been developing, which is a very, very good document. So we'll pore over that as well. So, I mean, traffic management on surface mines is the greatest risk that you've got there. So that's where you need to put a lot of effort. We think the code of practice that we're bringing out will help with that. It's very comprehensive. It's just under 100 pages. So definitely pore over that and give us your feedback. And so we want to get that one out as soon as possible. The second point, as Dwaine said, we're also concentrating on silica, making sure we don't have, too many, no silicosis cases in WA. It is still very, very low, but as we've seen with the stone bench tops, sometimes these things have gone wrong for regulators, and that sort of thing is a risk to you as an industry and to us as a regulator, and we will not accept that, silicosis cases. So we've got a major focus on that with our inspections coming up. We've developed a checklist which will be coming out shortly, and our inspectors will be focusing on that over the next year and a half. We're also looking at welding fume. As you can see that, there was a reduction in December last year of the exposure standard limit. Okay, so we'll be looking at that one as well. So we do, as I mentioned before, we are way behind on the codes and guides and information, so we've got a big push on that one as well to try and get good information out to the industry.
Tyler and Sally, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to what Tony was saying, we've got our inspection campaigns which will be launching very shortly, focusing on silica and both welding fumes. So I guess that's what we're doing in the immediate with regards to respiratory hazards. But what we're also doing, and Sally had alluded to on her slides as well, is we've got 2 major health projects that we're doing in consultation with our health team. And we've got 2 mines occupational physicians as well. So the one health project is around silica and silicosis, and it's looking at sort of historical exposures to silica within sort of the 80s and 90s, Paul. So what we're doing is we've done a deep dive into the SRS data and all the previous mine workers' health surveillance to see what work groups are most at risk. And then as part of that, we'll be putting them through a low-dose CT scan to get a sense of a feel around whether we're seeing some early signs of silicosis in these higher risk workers where we perhaps didn't have the level of control that we do today. And similarly, we've got a focus on retention of radionuclides. I'm looking at Paul. He's going to be leading that as well with Jubin, who's one of our other radiation experts within the health team. And similarly, that will be looking at radiation exposure for long-serving mine workers in the mineral sands industry. And this is really important as we're sort of seeing a bit of a focus around critical minerals. The state government's quite keen. So we just wanted to make sure that we've got a good understanding of how we managed exposures in the past and ensure that moving forward, if we're sort of pushing, and encouraging this industry, that we've got really robust controls in place. So that work will be done over the next 2 to 3 years, and as information comes to light, we'll be sharing that with everyone.
It's a fun time looking for that tiny radioactive capsule that fell off the back of the truck that time, wasn't it, a couple of years ago?
Not our jurisdiction.
Anyway, we found it. That's the main thing. All good. Sally, anything you want to add to that before we jump into the questions? Okay. Thank you for those questions that submitted so far. I should have pointed out, if you want a question you think it might be best answered by one of our panellists in particular, if you could make that clear, when you submit your question, that would be great. Let's start with one that's for you, Tony, but it comes with a compliment too for how things are going in New South Wales. It says New South Wales has an excellent system of getting information out to industry on recent mining incidents. Can WA learn from this and get useful info out to industry?
Yeah, look, that's a very, very good question. I'm pretty sure Patrick might have been patching that one in. I don't know, channeled through our inspectors, because we discussed it a lot, and all I can do is apologise for the lack of information that we've given you over the past few years. We did have pretty good systems to get information out, and that has atrophied over the years. We want to arrest that. We want to get information out in a timely manner, and some of you would have seen that we've sent out like a monthly incident summary. Just hands up if you got it a few weeks back or last week. Okay, not enough hands, so look at Sally's slide again once it comes out about getting our weekly alerts, and that you'll get it through that. So what we do is we want to put out information. We've done it in the past, and we want to try and get back to that point where we actually let you know what's happening. It is, it's not right that we don't tell you about what's going on enough. Okay, so I accept that as it's a responsibility of us to fix that and get more and better information out in a timely manner.
All right. While you're in the hot seat there, Tony, any update as to when SRS will be updated and modernised?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, Sally.
So, yeah, that's a good question, and we do have a really big program of works to produce a system that we're calling Compliance and Regulation System, or CARS for short, and it's a multi-year project, but it's going to start because it's going to also cover all of our different inspectorate components as well. So it starts rolling out in general industries first in 2026. Then is anticipated to roll out into the mine safety area in 2027. So it's not imminent, but it is something that we're working toward, and that we want to obviously make sure we're getting it right. It is going pretty well for the stage that it's at, and it's I think going to be taking us to the next level around effectiveness, ease of use for both external users and internal users.
Okay. Sally, this one's been directed to you too. The audits and audit guidelines related to mine safety still reference old regulations and acts. Are these going to be updated soon?
Yeah, that kind of ties on to what Tony said around we've got a lot of work to do in terms of updating our documents. So we we've got an enormous amount of material on our website. We're happy that we redid the website last year, and now all of that website content is at least in one place, so we've refreshed and gathered it up. But at the same time, we weren't able to get all of those updates done. We have quite a long to-do list in that space, and we're working through that as effectively as we can, prioritising both new and developing codes as well as updating other materials. So yes, we're getting to it, but it is also probably a multi-year program of works with the size of the teams that we've got working on that.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in there as well. We still do have the audits, the old audits online. We've put a little rider on there that say they're out of date for the new Act and regulations, but we didn't want all of that information to be sort of lost, so we've still got it there with that rider. As you're probably seeing, there is a lot of information and codes and guides coming from Safe Work Australia, or SWAR as we call it. Okay, so we've got a lot of new ones coming, plus we've got the old ones that need updating, and then the cascading down of the guides and other documents related to each particular hazard topic. So there's a mountain of work there, and it was one of the questions I had for Dwaine yesterday when I cornered him, how did they deal with it? And maybe I'll just jump to him and see how they haven't. Just the codes and updating of the codes and guides when you change the legislation.
So I guess for everything for us is that you prioritise, and that's what we did. We prioritise the ones for, in our legislation, we refer to some of our TRGs from legislation through gazettals. So we prioritise those ones first because they're the ones that can have the biggest impact industry. It's a work in progress. We, as our code of practice in our state, we have to actually consult with the other states as well. So they're generally a 6 to 12 month process is what they all take for us as well. So, but by having the prioritisation that we did from them as well, it sort of gives us these are the important ones when we work our way through the bottom ones. We have limited resources, and that's the way we've done it. So, and I will say openly is that some are old. We used to have mine design guidelines. The ones that we were never going to update, we just moved into archival records. You can still find them, but we have no intentions to, they're a point-in-time document that we don't intend to do as well. And made that quite clear to industry as well, that we're not going to update these for these reasons as well.
Can I just
Sure.
add to that? So within WA, so we actually do have a priority list that we're working to in relation to codes. So that priority list was done in consultation with MAPAC. So we're working our way through the list now. So as Tony mentioned, a big one of those is a road and traffic code, which is currently out for public consultation. We're working quite hard at the minute on 3 other codes, hopefully to get those out to public consultation as well before the end of the year. So it is just a matter of resources, and we can do a lot of what we can for the mining specific codes because only tend to have to go through to MAPAC. But we do have to be conscious as well that there is sort of 44, I believe, other codes across all of WorkSafe, and we do have shared resources to get those out. So yeah, we are working through a priority list. It's just we'll get there hopefully.
You're getting there. It's on your list, a long list. While you're there, Tyler, question for you here around WHS undertakings. Have we seen any since the inception of the new legislation, or are you finding that it's still a bit of an unknown concept?
Yeah, so we are currently engaged with a PCBU within the mining industry on a particular work health and safety undertaking. So this undertaking was specific to psychosocial hazards in nature. So the alleged contravention was I guess not adhering to a 171 notice, which has then resulted in that particular PCBU entering into a WHS enforceable undertaking. So we are at the tail end of that process. We have relied quite heavily on our counterparts in New South Wales and in Queensland to sort of guide us through that process. But I think all in all, and Sally can comment, it has been a successful process thus far. We can already see the community benefit and industry benefit that has come out of this undertaking. And a lot of the work that was produced from that undertaking can actually be found on the Lead Change Respect website, which is a platform that was actually produced as part of the undertaking. There's a lot of resources around the design of accommodation, psychosocial assurance standards, and other, I guess, promotional materials that mine sites can adopt. So that's come through an internal working group, and we've made our recommendations through to the Commissioner, but we're still probably looking at about a month or two before that process is finalised. Yeah.
We're taking a lot of your cues here, aren't we, Dwaine, in New South Wales?
So I was back in industry, and I was probably subject to the first enforceable undertaking actually. I used to work at Mount Arthur Coal. And I guess my advice to you is that we see quite a lot of them now come through as New South Wales. It's actually a good outcome because it gets a better community, industry and a worker outcome as well. But for, I guess, the roles you take in the room is engage early with your regulator about if that's the pathway you want to go through and work through the process. It's not a short one, but it can reward you quite well as well. And it's a win-win for both people, we call it. We don't particularly want to prosecute you. We prosecute you 2 years later, there's an outcome, you get fined. But what we didn't improve was the worker safety during that period of time. An enforceable undertaking will achieve that as well. So my advice is to companies who get themselves in that situation, which I don't want you to get in that situation, but engage early in the enforceable undertaking pathway because this is a good pathway for both the company, the community and the workforce as well.
Yeah. Tony, you mentioned the inspector workshop. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, how many per year would you get now? I think you may have looked at it, Tyler. But
last time I spoke with Safe Work New South Wales, I think it was around, they were engaged in about 42 EUs at the time. I'm not sure if it's the same for the resource.
We don't get that number of ones, thank God. It's generally about, because these things take so long, it's about 2 years from start to finish of any kind of investigation we do. So we generally see them trickle through about 1 to 2 a year maximum as well, with what we take up.
Tony, you mentioned the inspector workshops a little bit earlier. Question from the audience here wants to know what themes came out of that workshop regarding improvement particularly in the regulatory framework? What were the themes that came out of
look,
that?
the big theme that we wanted to touch on with our inspectors, and we had a planning day about a month or so ago, and we sort of, and then another day yesterday, it's about critical risk controls, okay? So we want to make sure that for your major hazards that you identify as part of your principal hazard mining plans, that you've got critical controls in place, and importantly that you've got them verified. And so we wanted to talk to our inspectors about how we look at that on sites, what are we expecting to see, and that's part of bringing Christian Young here today to talk about that, and also from New South Wales how they've done it. So yeah, it's all about critical risk control.
Yeah. A question for you, Sally, around sharing info and stats on reportable and notifiable incidents and significant incident rates, making the point here that fatality rates aren't enough to benchmark industry. What are your thoughts around that?
I agree, no, that's for sure. And we do have a bigger report annually on safety performance in the WA mining sector. So we're just in the finalisation of the next update to that, and that does go into more detail around types of injuries, rates, different sectors, and a whole range of statistics. So that one is the deeper dive, and so there's a previous year's version on the website, and there's the year after that coming soon, and we'll look to see how we can improve the timeliness of that, because that has been a little bit lagging as well, but it is good information. I encourage you to have a look.
Okay. Any plans to provide more education to officers similar to this forum? For instance, they have an important part to play in culture, but are often too far removed. That was one directed your way, Sally.
Look, that's the importance of this venue, I guess, and this forum, and bringing that back on a more regular basis, because it gives us those opportunities to engage with you as a leadership group, and also to get your feedback. And so that's part of the feedback there in terms of content that you'd like to see. Not everybody in the room would be an officer for the purposes of the Act, and we have to be, again, that can be part of the conversation. Who is an officer under the Act? And it's basically someone who's in a position where their decisions make a change or affect a large part of that organisation, that proprietary limited organisation generally that you're working for. So if you're in that position, then you're an officer. Otherwise, you're a person with responsibilities that assists the PCBU in meeting their duties. So going through that is something that we're happy to do more information on as well. So look, provide the feedback in terms of what you'd like to see in future events of this type, and we're always looking at what people want in terms of our information. Safe Work Month is the other one. So when we're running our annual events at Safe Work Month, what are the audiences there? What is the demand, I guess? So we're very interested in hearing from you about what you would like to see as part of those events.
Okay.
Look, we also do run the road shows, and we do plan on having the road shows later on this year, and we'll have different themes for that. So that's something that's been pretty consistent over the years. So we also do have the registered medical practitioners group that come together. So there is a number of forums and conferences that we do run. Happy to have your ideas on any more that you want, but we try and do as much as we can to get out information and listen.
Yeah. In terms of, I suppose, taking information from forums like this forward, there's a comment here about best practice and improvement ideas may be a better way to upskill industry. So perhaps sharing positive learnings as well might be an effective way of, I suppose, bringing everyone along for the ride. How do you feel about that suggestion?
I'd just like to say I think that's a really great suggestion. I have been to events where a person from industry said, we think we're going okay in this, we'd actually like to share it. So again, if you get that feedback message around feedback, and if you go, actually I'd really love to share something we're doing, we would be absolutely keen to help you share that and to share some good practice. So I'm very, very open to looking at that.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Yep.
What's the best way for people to get that information to you?
There will be a feedback survey through this event, and also we have our contact on the website. Feedback from my inspectors, though, over the last couple of weeks is with our new name change, being local government now, they are struggling. People are struggling to find us.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are on there. If you type in WorkSafe, you should be able to get our contacts.
It seems like there's a real appetite for up-to-date information and advice from you guys. This one here again for you, Tony. The last industry safety stats report issued reference financial year 2022. So are there plans for a more recent publication noting the bulletins on quarterly financial year 24 stats?
Yeah, look, we have put out an updated report from that. I think it was the 22-23, which is the WA, performance in the WA minerals industry. So there is always a lag with the stats because we need to make sure that the information is verified and collated, and then making the report, the approvals, etc. So we do try and get it out as soon as possible. So there should be more coming out now that we've clicked over to the next year.
Yeah. Okay. That's all good. I think we're just about out of time. I can see the clock rapidly running away from us right in front of us. So thank you to those who submitted questions. I hope you found that session informative, and your questions were answered by our panellists up here. So would you please thank our panellists for their insights and their time this morning. So Tyler, Sally, Dwaine and Tony, thank you very much.